At the Agra Indian restaurant, we select only the freshest of spices. At the Agra Indian restaurant, we use only the best quality meats and vegetables. We at the Agra bring you the very best of Indian cuisine. For that special function or wedding, the Agra Indian restaurant has excellent banqueting facilities. Experience a warm welcome and authentic Indian cuisine in luxurious surroundings, only at the Agra Indian restaurant.
Just 100 yards from this cinema. As far back as I can remember, I always watched films. So this is a series of videos on how I discovered movies and in which formats. VHS, TV, and cinema. This episode is about the cinema. The first part of our video takes us to sunny Lampeter in Wales. Which was the local town where I grew up. And this is the Victoria Hall in Lampeter, an on-off cinema throughout the 100 years it's been around. And it was in the early 80s that my mother hired it out for a charity event to show some films. There were two films that I remember seeing there. One was James Bond's Octopussy, and the second was Battlestar Galactica. It was a pilot TV show in America, but released theatrically in the UK. As my mother was hosting the event, I was allowed to sit up by the projector and see the film from there, which started my love for the cinema. I will head up north to Aberystwyth. So Aberystwyth was about a 45-minute drive from my house, and it had two things which I loved. One was the cinema, and the other was a Wimpy, which is the British version of McDonald's. But there we ate burgers on plates with knives and forks. One time I visited there, for some reason I was wearing white denim trousers and had a hot chocolate, which I spilled on my legs. So this is the Commodore Cinema, and it hasn't changed in about 50 years. It still has the posters outside, although in the olden days they used to have a big poster and about 8 stills from the film underneath. But apart from that, exactly the same. And this is the ticket and concessions booth as you go in. So one night we went to see Crocodile Dundee, which is a 15 certificate in the UK, and it was packed out. We were queuing down the street. And once we'd finally got in, they were so busy that they asked me my age, and I said 14, and they said, "You can't come in." So then we had to go home, which took another 45 minutes. So this was such an old-fashioned cinema that it used to have Warner Brothers cartoons before the main show. So once you'd sat down, watched the adverts, the trailers, the cartoons, the film would not begin. There would be an intermission. And then a little concessions booth would open its door, which was at the front left of the cinema, as depicted here. And then once everyone had got their ice creams, the film would finally begin. So some of the films I saw there was The Muppet Movie, Disney's Fox and the Hound, Ghostbusters, Big Trouble in Little China. It used to be my dad that took me, but I don't think he liked any of the films that we saw, because like halfway through Big Trouble in Little China he'd go outside to smoke his pipe because he was bored. But God bless him for taking me. One particular memorable visit to the cinema was Rocky IV when it came out. My dad took me and a group of my friends from school, and it is the only time I have seen a British cinema go crazy. By the end of that film, the whole cinema was going, "Rocky, Rocky, Rocky," for the final fight. I've never seen anything like it since. Right, we're off again, this time to New Quay. No, not that one. This one's in West Wales and a lot smaller. So this is the seaside town of New Quay, where it had a memorial hall that was mostly used as a cinema during the summer season. But before we went to the cinema, we used to hang out in the arcade and play some games like Outrun, Operation Wolf, Turtles, and Golden Axe. So then when we did go to the cinema, we used to pay the extra 50p to go up and sit on the balcony. And it was here I saw some of the films like Rain Man, Beetlejuice, Return of the Jedi, so it was the first Star Wars film I saw in the cinema, Golden Child, Twins, some of the ones that spring to mind, and finally I did get to see Crocodile Dundee in the cinema. About once a year my father would take me to Farnborough to visit relations, and it was whilst there we'd sometimes go to the cinema. This is where, as a child of 15, 16, I got to have my first McDonald's, and I didn't enjoy the pickle. So I only remember two films, Three Men and a Baby from 87 and Short Circuit 2 from 88. So I still have fond memories of that visit. So now it's 1989 and we're about to see the biggest film of the year, possibly the decade. Batman. And if you were going to see that film, where would you want to see it first? Llanelli, right? So I remember queuing up opening day to go and see it, and I was wearing my special Batman shoes to celebrate it. So after the summer of Batman, I would be staying in Llanelli for a technical college, where I saw a few other films as I stayed there from Sunday to Thursday night. I remember seeing such classics as Young Einstein, Millennium, and Star Trek V, which I believe I saw twice that year. So the cinema I probably saw the most films at was the one in the City by the Bay, Swansea. So the day I passed my driving test, I drove the hour and a quarter, and the first film I saw, I think, was RoboCop 2. So after that, my little Talbot Solera and I were up at Swansea weekly. This is when it was called a UCI cinema, 10 screens. First time I'd been to a very big multiplex. I remember going to the midnight showing at the opening weekend of Jurassic Park. From then on, it was pretty much any film released in the early 90s. Split Second, Double Impact, Silence of the Lambs, Total Recall, and many, many wonderful films. And a little film called Terminator 2 Judgment Day, which also had the arcade machine, which cost me a lot of money outside the theatre. I wasn't much of a fan of popcorn, but my go-to snack was the hot dog, nachos, and the Coke. And of course, every so often they'd change the cheese recipe. There was one time I went for the day and I saw 5 films in that day. Batman Returns, The Player, and Alien 3 I remember, but the other 2 I can't remember. It was a long day. It was also the cinema I saw The Evil Dead 1 and 2 for the first time, where they had a midnight showing double bill before Army of Darkness came out the following week. They also had a Star Trek marathon, which was going to be about 12 hours with the first 6 films. But we only made it through the first 3, which is good because those are the only ones I hadn't seen in the cinema before, because 4th was the first one I'd seen in the cinema, the Aberystwyth cinema. But at least I can say I've seen all of them in the cinema now. So during the 90s, I spent a bit of time in London, on or off, throughout the decade. One cinema visit was to the Age of Innocence Royal Premiere, because I had a massive crush on Winona Ryder, expecting her to be there, but she wasn't. None of the cast or Martin Scorsese was there, but I did get to walk a red carpet and go into a big theatre, which was nice. I do remember seeing Terminator 2 at the Odeon, Leicester Square, but I can't remember if I saw it first in Swansea or in London. And due to The Exorcist being banned on home media, the 80s and 90s, the only place to see it was some cinemas, and the London Trocadero was one of those. They used to have a Friday, Saturday 10 PM showing, so that's where I saw it for the first time. So in the year 2000, I was doing a computer course, and I had to spend a couple of nights in Birmingham, so of course I went to the cinema. So to find out more about Birmingham, let's ask Telly Savalas.
This is my kind of town. So long, Birmingham. Here's looking at you.
So the 2 films that we saw was Mission Impossible 2, which I was very disappointed by, and I also saw Basic Instinct, just me and a couple of guys in raincoats. So that's the story up until the new millennium. Thanks for watching. Here ends the lesson.